going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to install a fuel pump into the Tahoe in preparation for the supercharger. This is the last step before I actually put the blower on the truck. So this is the fuel pump that we're going to be using. It's a Works, and it is the biggest pump that they make for in-tank application. There's the part number right here. So this fuel pump can support 415 liters per hour at 40 psi. LS stuff, we run 58 psi, but still, this is plenty of pump to do what I need it to do. This is the most badass thing that they make right now. The diameter is pretty huge, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of modifying to the bucket to make it fit. I'll set this next to a standard 255 in-tank pump that we used to use back in the day, and you can see the size difference. So this pump's good for E85, whatever I put in it, alcohol. It comes with the sock that goes on the bottom, a couple pieces of hose, and the little wire harness connector. So I'm hoping that I can make this fit without too much issue. Haven't done one. So I'll get the tank out of the Tahoe, which is a pretty simple process, and then we'll start modifying the bucket to get this thing to fit. This is the Works pump here, the DW400, and this is a standard body size 255 that we normally use, so you can see the difference in size. The height, not that much, but in width, it's a big difference. Normally a 255 is 40 millimeters, and the Works is 46 millimeters. So you figure 3 millimeters on each side. I should be able to fit that in the bucket without too many issues. Just another note before I get the Tahoe on the lift. This fuel pump is about 250 bucks, which in reality I don't think is that bad. If you were gonna do like an Aeromotive A1000 or a Holley external pump or any kind of weird fuel system that would work on this truck, you know, while still maintaining drivability, it's gonna be a lot more expensive. So if I can make this pump work without modifying the crap out of it and ruining everything else that's inside of my tank, this is definitely the way to go. It's not noisy, and it'll still support as much horsepower as I'm possibly gonna make with this thing. So without further ado, I'm gonna get this thing in the air and get under it and start taking the tank out. Alright, so I put a light under the truck so hopefully you guys can see what's going on. There is our fuel tank. It's a lot bigger than I thought it would be, honestly. So the process is basically this. We remove the evap canister, the charcoal canister. It's probably got a couple lines on it, maybe an electrical connection for a pressure sensor, I'm not really sure. Then on the back side, over here, we remove the fuel fill pipe and the vent hose, and then at the front of the tank there's going to be a line that runs forward to feed the engine, and then we have our two gas tank straps here, and the fuel tank should come down. I ran this thing pretty low on fuel. I didn't get to drive it as much as I wanted, so we're at about a quarter of a tank right now, so hopefully it's not too heavy and I can wrestle it out of here by myself. Pretty simple process on these older trucks. There's not much in the way. You don't have to remove exhaust or anything like that. So I'm going to start wrestling with the charcoal canister and get that out of the way, and then we'll start lowering the tank down and remove any lines that we need to as we go. In case you guys didn't see that, that was an incredibly large pain in the ass, and I honestly don't know if I even had to do it. So once I get the tank down and I can see the top of the tank, I'll let you know if that actually has to come out, because it sucked. You guys want to see something stupid? This is GM engineering. So you can see the two clamps on the fill tube and the vent tube. How am I supposed to get anything on those clamps to loosen them when they're on the top side? Why wouldn't they put them on the bottom side so they're easy to get to? This is just typical everyday stuff. GM does it so it's easy to assemble, probably before the body was on the truck, so the clamps face up. And now I've got to fight to get them off there. My lucky day. The worm clamp came apart. Now I got to pry it off there. Best tool ever invented. It's a panel popper tool, but it's about 2.5 feet long. It's great, way better than a pry bar. All right, now that I'm thoroughly covered in dirt, I'm gonna get a trans jack under this thing and take the gas tank straps off and start lowering it down. And we're going to see what kind of fuel line connections we have on the top of the tank. There's probably going to be a feed and a return. There might be another vent. I'm not sure yet. And once I get it down, I'll take video of the top of the tank so you can see better everything that I had to disconnect. How the video showed that, but what just happened is the nuts that sit inside of the frame just broke the welds. So now I've got 2 half-loose bolts front and rear of the fuel tank that I need to somehow get out, and I don't know how I'm gonna do that yet. I'll be back with you in a second. All right, so here's the plan. We're gonna do something really fun right next to a fuel tank. I'm gonna cut both the bolts off of the front and the back. And once I get the fuel tank out, I will reassess the situation because I can't get to the top side of the frame right now with the fuel tank in. So we'll be careful. We haven't undone any fuel lines yet, except for the fill at the back. So we're gonna cut this thing and see what happens. And just a quick note, I put the fuel fill tube and the vent tube back on the rear of the tank just to seal it up. Alright, got both bolts cut. Get these straps out of the way and start lowering the tank down. Status update. This is not a fun job. I've done truck fuel tanks before and they fall right out. But as you can see, there's a little too much fuel in the tank, so we started to spill some out, so I had to put a cap in the fill tube here. But here's what the issue is. The tank sits on top of this cross member, and you can't move it back far enough because the rear end is in the way. So you have to take the tank out at an angle, which is proving to be not fun. because there's so much fuel in it, which is probably why in the GM instructions it says drain fuel tank, which, why would I do that? I don't follow instructions. So I'm going to continue to struggle to get this thing out, and once I get it on the ground, I'm going to drain the fuel out of it because it's too late to do it now. Not fun. Step number 1 in removing the fuel tank, drain the fuel. Did I do that? No. Big mistake, because this thing shoehorns into the truck. I've got it down, and everything went okay, I guess, once I got all the stuff disconnected. I'm going to pull the sending unit out of this thing real quick, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the fuel out of this tank so that when I go to put it back in, it's a lot easier. And what I'll do is I'll also drag this out into the light so we can see it a little bit better. But up above this cross member, which is at an angle, are 2 connections for the fuel pump. There's 2 electrical connections, and at the back there's the fill tube and the vent tube. Once you got all that stuff disconnected, it does come out, but it comes out at a real steep angle. So when I go to put it back in, I'll get some better video of how you have to throw this thing up in there, because I just struggled for about 10 minutes trying to get this thing out, and it was not fun, and I don't want to put it on video. I'll pull the sending unit out and get it on a table, and then we'll go from there. Draining fuel. Hopefully I can get about 10 gallons out of it. I can't believe there was so much in it because it was showing about 1/4 of a tank. So once I get the fuel drained out of the tank, we'll go over to the table with the sending unit, and then I need to clean up my mess because there is dirt and fuel everywhere. On the plus side, it's still all E85, so it smells pretty good in here right now. Okay, so here we go. This is the original fuel pump bucket. It is nasty. The top of the tank was all covered in dirt. So what I need to do is I'm going to take a measurement from the sealing surface of this to the bottom, so when I disassemble this and put it back together, I can make sure that it's the same height so that the fuel pump will pick up fuel off the bottom of the tank. This has a siphon system built into it, and that's what fills this bucket with fuel. So the filter's on the outside of the bucket, and then it siphons with vacuum fuel to fill the bucket. Then the pump's located inside here too, and then this is our fuel level sending unit, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, so I'm going to look into that too. So what I'll do is I'll just set up the GoPro on the table, and I'm going to start to disassemble this thing, and we'll see what kind of trouble we can get into. Alright, so all that I'm doing right now is I'm taking the sending unit off the side of the bucket. I already took the arm off because it looks like there's no connection at the top of this. It's all hardwired. So I want to remove this so that I have some freedom to move stuff around. Alright, now it looks like I can separate the 2 halves of the bucket, see what we got inside. Alright, so that's it. Here's the original fuel pump. And this was an E85 flex fuel truck. Should call it flex fuel, that's its actual name. So that's it. Now I need to get this pump out and try to fit the other one in. Now if you look at the top of this pump, it has a siphon port on it. The new pump does not, and that's alright. What we used to do in F-bodies and other cars like that is you drill a couple holes in the bottom of the bucket, and that's where it now gets its fuel from, instead of siphoning out of the bottom of the tank. This is good and bad. If you have fuel slosh, then you can run your pump dry. So you try to keep a little bit more fuel in the truck at all times, but unless you can find a big pump that also has a siphon feature, you're kind of out of luck. So I'm going to get this old pump out, and we're going to start modifying this housing to fit the new pump. And what I'm trying to do right now is get this clamp off the hose at the top of the housing, It's got some little tabs on it. We're not going to reuse it, so if it breaks, that's okay. And it's a metal tube that comes through the top of the bucket, so you don't really have to worry about damaging it, but either way, still be careful. You don't want to ruin anything if you don't have to. Alright, that's the old fuel pump. It's the new fuel pump. You can see the obvious size difference. I just noticed something too on this part of the bucket. So this is your feed to your engine, the blue clip. This is your return. The return comes through the top of the bucket and out of this hole here, and it actually refills this bucket. So I'm still going to put a hole in the bottom of this bucket, but I'll make it small so that when the truck sits, it can fill. But the return is going to take care of most of that for me, so I don't want the hole so big that as it's returning, it just flows right into the bottom of the tank. So, like I said, I've never done this before, so we're going to see how it works. So I don't know how well you guys can see this, but there's two triangle pieces on the outside of that circle. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to nip those back a little bit, and it looks like this fuel pump is going to slide right in. It's actually a really nice fit. I am pleasantly surprised on that one. So that's all I really have to do to get this to fit, and then it should slide right back down into the bucket. We need to make sure that the pump stays right on the bottom of the bucket too. The way that the filter is designed is it can't sit on the bottom and suck shut. It's got little standoffs in it, so this will keep enough space for it to still pick up fuel. And then what we also have is our new electrical connector. You don't want to use solder inside of fuel tanks. You actually just use butt connectors because they won't dissolve in the fuel. So once I get this in the bucket and we're going to try to look at our fuel line situation and see how it looks, I'll wire it and we'll put everything else back together. Honestly, I can't express enough how easy this is going. This is the easy part. Getting the fuel tank out of the truck was a pain. We've got the new filter pushed onto the bottom of the pump. We're going to slide the pump into this housing and reassemble the bucket real quick. Just to make sure that this is going to fit in there without any issues. And once you have the bucket snapped back together, you can push the fuel pump down to the bottom of the bucket. And then what I like to do is pull the bucket back apart. Like this, and that will tell you where your fuel pump has to sit. So then you can go ahead and get your line and your electrical connections done. The DeechWorks kit comes with regular worm clamps. I'm going to put fuel injection clamps on it and I'll show you the difference. So this is a regular worm clamp. You can see how it's made. This is a fuel injection clamp. It's smooth, basically has like a pinch bolt at the top of it. When you tighten these down on fuel line, it tends to dig in and mess up the hose. These don't. So we're going to use these. There's our line installed. Now we need to cut off the old fuel pump connector and wire in our new one. Here's the assembly complete back together. Got our hose on, our electrical connections are made, got the bucket back together with the sending unit float back on, and I drilled a 1/4 inch hole in the bottom of the bucket to help the bucket fill from the bottom. Now the return side here is going to help fill the bucket, but the bucket has to be able to get full if it's not returning. That's why I put the small hole in the bottom. So when this is submerged in fuel, the fuel level will be able to come up, and then the return side is going to help fill the bucket all the way to the top. Hopefully it returns faster than it can leak through this bottom hole. We'll see how it works. I don't know how to do it. We're winging it. So I'm going to get this back in the tank, get the floor swept up, and get the tank back in the truck. Alright, so remember the 2 bolts that I broke when I was taking out the fuel tank? Now I have to find a way to fix them. And what I'd like to do is just put a couple of flag nuts up in the frame. Be careful when I put the tank back in there and be sure that I catch them. And roll on. But I don't know if I have any flag nuts that are big enough, or if I even have any at all anymore. But if I don't have anything, I'm gonna have to run up to the auto parts store real quick, which sucks because once I get rolling on something, I don't like stopping. So I'm going to look through my other toolbox real quick and see if I can find anything. If I can't, just to the parts store we go. These are the 2 guys that broke. You can see they were tack welded to the inside of the frame. So we need to find something to replace them. My lucky day, J-nuts. Got a couple of these, a couple metric bolts with big washers. So that's what was in there. This is what we're gonna put in there with a large washer, and we're good to go. There you can see the kind of angle that you have to put this tank in at, and it's a whole lot easier when it's empty. I took probably 12 gallons of fuel out of it at 7 pounds a gallon. You do the math because I can't. The fuel tank is back in the truck and bolted in. The little J-nuts with the different bolts worked out just fine. It's nice and tight. So now what we have to do is reconnect our 2 tubes in the back and our 1, 2, 3 charcoal canister connections, and then on top of the tank, the 2 fuel connections. Fuel tank is back in the Tahoe. I swept up the floor a little bit. Moment of truth. We're gonna pour 5 gallons back in it, key it up a couple times, make sure we hear the pump running, and then we are going to start it. The reason I'm only putting 5 gallons back in is if there's a problem, I'm gonna have to pull the tank back down, and I don't want to deal with an extra 120 pounds of fuel again. So I'm gonna pour that in real quick, cross your fingers, hope everything works. See what happens. I heard a fuel pump. I'm gonna key it up one more time. Heard it again. Here we go. Success. It works. That's awesome. Let it run here for a couple seconds. Make sure nothing's leaking. It's a good day. Good day. Glad it worked. All right, everyone. That is how you put a badass fuel pump in a Tahoe. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't know if this applies for Silverados or any other GM vehicle. This was actually a fairly easy job once I got the fuel tank out, and it's my fault for bringing it here with so much fuel in it. If it was empty, it would have been a whole lot easier to get out, put everything in it, and put it back together. All in all, I probably could have done it on the lift in about 2 hours. It took me about 3. I had bolts break and stuff like that, but this truck's got 230,000 miles on it, and I'm almost 100% sure that's the original fuel pump. So I was even risking hurting the engine running around on that old fuel pump. I don't know what kind of shape it's in. So now we're good to go. We have enough fuel to do whatever we want to do. This realistically should support between 500 and 600 of the wheels, being that the pump is so big, and it's quiet too. When I keyed it on, I really had to listen for it to turn on. So I'm gonna pour the rest of the fuel back into the Tahoe, and I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of my Saturday. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please comment below, and always remember to check me out on Instagram, hi_PSI_TV. There's always a link in the description. And thanks to RPM Motorsports for letting me use the shop again. I come up here almost every weekend because this is where all my stuff is, and in case I need something, we always have extra parts laying around. So check them out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're trying to get our YouTube channel really rolling. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.